Wait a minute.
Ready here.
How I spell my name. My name is Kenethia Miller. Kennethia Miller, Miller. I would like to welcome members of the media and supporters to this very important press conference today, called by the St. Louis branch of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. My name is Kenethia Miller, a member of the local InPDUM branch. I will introduce all of our speakers who will give their statements and then accept questions, so please hold your questions until the end. I would like to introduce our first speaker, Omali Yeshitela, chairman of the African People's Socialist Party and leader of the Uhuru Movement, who will present our statement to the press. Chairman Yeshitela has been an important leader and participant in the community struggles here in Ferguson and St. Louis since the police killing of 18-year-old Michael Brown on August 9th of this year. Welcome, Chairman.
Thank you. As has been stated, my name is Omali Yeshitela. I'm chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, which is the parent organization of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. I'm here today to announce that in the face of the inability of the justice system to work for our people and our community, in the face of a grand jury's inability to see what the whole world has been able to see about the murder of Mike Brown on August 9th, and that, of course, being enhanced and punctuated by a grand jury determination not to indict in the case in New York of the brother who was murdered there in full view of the world with the video that has gone throughout the world. Clearly, it is time for African people to begin to take matters into our own hands. And in that regard, I'm here to announce that on January 3rd and 4th, black people will have our own grand jury where we will look at the ability to indict Darren Wilson for the August 9th murder. I think that what happens in this country is there is an assumption that things can happen to us with impunity, that police can gun us down without any kind of recourse, that judges and grand juries can overlook that and even validate these kinds of acts against us based on the assumption that there is no recourse that we have as a community. We say that we do have a recourse, that we can step forward as a community, and that's what we're going to do in this case. And so I'm here to say that in the wake of the St. Louis County grand jury decision not to indict Ferguson police officer Darren Wilson in the August killing of 18-year-old Michael Brown, the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement will hold a black people's grand jury on January 3rd and 4th, 2015 at the Ambassador Concert and Event Center. That's at 9800 Halls Ferry Road in St. Louis. The Black People's Grand Jury will be a completely transparent legal process based on standing law, open to all, and using transcripts of Wilson's testimony. Unlike the grand jury that happened here on the Missouri Authority, in this instance, it is not going to be a secret, hidden grand jury, that everybody will be able to step forward, and the evidence that was put forward in that grand jury will be something that everybody will have an opportunity to listen to. We say that the black grand jury jurors will be selected, and the grand jury will call its own witnesses. We'll have a people's advocate and forensic pathologist. The black grand jurors will review all of the salient points and evidence from the state's grand jury and will come to conclusions based on the historical experience and point of view of the African community of Ferguson, the United States, and the world. The Black People's Grand Jury will vote to indict or dismiss on various charges against Wilson. Besides Wilson, the jury will subpoena Ferguson Mayor James Knowles, prosecuting attorney Robert McCullough, and Missouri Governor Jay Nixon. As a solution to the endemic problem of police murder and violence against the African community, the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement is also putting forward a campaign of black community control of the police with the powers to hire and fire and discipline the police forces operating in the black communities. I just think it's really important for us to say that just because the St. Louis grand jury could not recognize the need to indict Wilson, it doesn't mean that we have no recourse. And I think that the other thing needs to be said that has not been said loudly enough is that clearly, although Darren Wilson is a killer and has murdered in cold blood in broad daylight in the city of Ferguson in this county, that he does not stand alone, and he is not the only one that's responsible. Because despite the fact that Darren Wilson pulled the trigger that led to Mike Brown being shot at least 7 times, twice in the top of his head, Darren Wilson didn't make the decision to leave his body rotting on 100-degree plus asphalt for 4.5 hours. Somebody else did that. Darren Wilson didn't give himself nearly $1 million as a reward for the murder of Mike Brown. Others participated in that process. Darren Wilson was not the only one who was running around on the police department wearing bracelets saying, "I am Darren Wilson." There's a culture here, there's a history here, and there are a lot of forces involved in this process that need to also be recognized, and that's why it is important, incumbent, absolutely necessary for black people to hold our own grand jury and to show that using the same set of facts, using the same basic evidence, using the same forensic evidence that was put forward, they say, at that grand jury, of course, with the difference being that we'll have an opportunity now to cross-examine the evidence and the testimony given by Darren Wilson that did not occur with the St. Louis grand jury. A difference being that we will not attempt to treat the murder of Mike Brown as a simple aberration, an incident among other incidents that's happening, but as we would contextualize it with the history of black people in this county, in this country, and see whether or not it is unlikely that Darren Wilson or any instrument of state power in this country would murder an 18-year-old unarmed teenager. So I wanted to say that this is going to be an important event, and I think that it will set a precedent that we will see people in New York and other places using in the face of an inability or unwillingness of the state, the colonial state, to act in our favor. There's a Brother Baruti. This is Aki Baruti.
Yeah. Okay, my name is Aki Baruti, and I'm President General of the Universal African Peoples Organization. I'm here and also part of the Leadership Coalition for Justice. I'm here in absolute support of the call by my good brother Omali Yesatelli for the convening of the grand jury that would be much more transparent than the grand jury that existed under the leadership of what we consider a criminal, Bob McCullough. I'm in total agreement with his statements. This situation involving Michael Brown is a reflection of the whole culture that targets black men and women across this country, as well as the legal cover-ups that comes as an extension of the murders of black men and women. And they're too numerous to name. But of course, in recent time, we have had not only the killing of Mike Brown, but the murder of Eric Gardner that people have seen on TV. The killings also right here in St. Louis, Myers and another brother on Riverview Avenue, as well as forgotten in the history last year, a brother named Kerry Ball shot 25 times, 7 in the back after a police chase. So it signals what has happened is that this kind of is reflective of the Dred Scott decision, where the rights of black people are not to be respected by white people. And so we cannot allow that. Enough is enough. And so I'm here in support and stand firmly with my brother as we move forward with the convening of a true grand jury.
Thank you. And I want to say also, to make it known that I am also a member of the Justice for Mike Brown leadership coalition that exists in this county as well. So, are we open for questions now?
Before we go any further, could we get you to spell your name for us?
My name is Omali, O-M-A-L-I. Last name Yesatelli, Y-E-S-H-I-T-E-L-A.
Thank you, sir.
Quite well.
This am I correct in understanding that there's no government officials involved in this process?
That's right. Then we wouldn't have government officials. We are saying that the government officials that were involved in the process are a part of the problem, and I think it's really important for it to be understood that the agent of the government that most black people come into daily contact with is the police department. And that is the struggle that we're involved in now. One arm of the government, the police, comes into the community, kills a young man. Another arm of the police, of the government, the grand jury, vindicates the police officer for doing that. And then other forces connected with the government who are part of the police department wear bracelets on their arms celebrating the fact that he was murdered. So no, this is not something that's being done by the colonial police department. This is something being done by African people who are subjected to colonial terrorism ourselves.
As well as, if I can add, when you're talking about the arms of the government, even at the highest level of the state government, where Jay Nixon had the opportunity to remove Bob Color, and his callousness and moral breakdown, I'm talking in terms of Jay Nixon, when he had that opportunity, reflects, as he just said, a government that says to hell with black people. And we just can't accept that.
So what do you hope to happen next? If you indict Darren Wilson, you won't have the authority to arrest him or to put him in jail or anything like that. So
That's a really profound observation that you've just made. Because the reality is the only thing that makes a difference in what the grand jury did in St. Louis County, the legal colonial grand jury, and what we will do here on January 3rd and 4th, is that if, in fact, we indict Darren Wilson, we don't have guns. The government has guns, and it has state power and authority over our people. What it does is educate and informs our people that two bodies came together, examined the same set of evidence, and were able to come to different conclusions. Therefore, the only thing standing between us being able to carry out the will of the people is to change this relationship that exists between us and the armed state apparatus that controls us. So really, in that question, there really is a suggested solution.
that you change it? How?
That one doesn't place limitations on what has to be done to be free. One can't impose self-limitations to say, how will one be free? I mean, we have a situation now where there's a president in the White House that's bombing people all around the world, ostensibly in the name of being free. At the same time, those people around the world have done nothing to people in this country, certainly done nothing to people who live on Canfield Drive, and you have this murder happening, and yet murder is happening to us here and on Canfield Drive, and we're being told by the same government that what we should be is be peaceful and not respond in kind. So I'm not suggesting what has to be done. Common sense will tell the people what has to be done. What we have a responsibility to do is to give people a clear example of what this government stands for and how it treats African people. Again, we will examine the same evidence. We will take the transcripts that came from that grand jury and then present it to black people in a grand jury in front of an audience, not behind closed doors where nobody knows who winked at whom. A grand jury who we almost are certain did not donate a single penny to Darren Wilson that contributed to that $1 million, is something that we cannot say about this grand jury. A grand jury that we are certain never wore a bracelet saying, I am Darren Wilson. We will put it in their hands, examine the same information, use the same forensic information, and we are almost certain that the conclusion is going to be different. So that's a profound statement. It's a statement about the government and our relationship to the government. But then, of course, the grand jury hasn't happened yet, and like here, we'll have to wait and see the outcome. Yeah.
Might there be the same outcome? The grand jury.
One can't say. We've been considering having 3 white people on the grand jury. We can't say. I mean, the only thing we can say is we'll present the evidence and see if people listening to the same evidence with an understanding and under the leadership, in this instance, of people's advocates or prosecutors that will present instructions that open up the ability to place the death of Mike Brown in some historical context. Let's see. We'll see what the people determine.
No, if I may add one other last point that my brother touched upon, that as we moving forward, is that in terms of who patrols and work in our community. And one of the positive proposals outside of the grand jury is that we need to begin to have the people, when we say the people of the community begin to select who should work in the community. What we have right now is a disproportionate number of white officers working in the black community. As the St. Louis Post-Dispatch on their front page reported, out of balance, where you have communities populated by black people such as Ferguson, 67% black, yet of 53 officers, only 3 are black. So that's one important ingredient that the people need to begin to choose the officers to work in the community. Also, every community police force ought to reflect the ethnicity of the community, and they should live within their community. And effective civilian oversight boards need to also be implemented as we move forward.
Well, let me just say that one of the things we will ask this grand jury to look at is the whole issue of black community control of the police in the black communities. Right. Because this changes the relationship that we have with the police department that comes to the community from the outside, always looking for trouble that they call crime. That's their role. They come to that community specifically looking for trouble. There are 1,000 contradictions that exist in our community: poverty, homelessness, joblessness, the whole bit. And what we're saying is that the police in our community, under the leadership of the black community itself, and I want to be clear about that, under the black community's leadership, that this police organization would not just come into the community looking for crime. They would not be an invading force. They would live in the community trying to solve all the problems of the community that include not just crime, but poverty, educational issues, homelessness, bad housing, etc. They need to be a part of the community, living in the community, solving all the problems of the community, and not some invading force that comes looking for trouble that they like to call crime. And most of what they call crime anyway, properly defined, deal with an impoverished population trying to survive, and that a population that's not going to not survive because the government and the industry here will not provide jobs and resources for them. So a real police organization, a real servant of the people, which is what the police have to be to exist in our community, would be involved in trying to solve all those problems, and that would contextualize even the issue of crime in the community and their response to the community. They have to live in that community. There cannot be an invading, marauding group of terrorists that we are confronted with all around this country today, and we're confronted with it in St. Louis, and we're confronted with it in Ferguson. So we're going to have this black people's grand jury, and we're all going to be on pins and needles waiting to see what the outcome is going to be.
How are they going to be selected? And have they been selected?
They haven't been selected, but the community, we'll get together with the different organizations and we'll select people based on their good reputation, based on their commitment to justice for black people, based on whether or not they've been involved in trying to struggle to change the conditions that we have as a people. That is a real peer. Just that living in the same city is not my peer, because there were white people on the slave ships too. And just because we're on the same ship did not make us peers. What makes us peers is that we suffer the same consequences in society, in life, and we have the same aspirations, and we have the same kind of conditions. So we will select people for the grand jury based on the practice of commitment to the struggle to change the conditions of black people. Doesn't it make sense?
You were saying civilian review board, make the police force reflect the community they live in, or the community police. I know there's been some efforts in that direction in Ferguson and in St. Louis. Is that enough, or what are your response to those?
that's nowhere near where it needs to be heading. So it's nowhere, not just only in Ferguson, St. Louis, that's across the country. And again, mindful, those are just some simple reforms that we need to have. But as my brother said earlier, the basic reform is that the community needs to begin to control who actually work in our community. And that gets to the essence of the problem facing our community and the relationship with the police. And last point on when my brother made mention of occupying force, what we have is similar to how the United States has been in not welcoming places like Iraq and even historically Vietnam, serving as occupying forces in other countries. The same kind of thing where you have police officers having no kind of positive relationships with the people. I'm talking about primarily white officers.
It should be clear. I've been told that the commanding officer in New York in July, when the brother was choked to death, was an African woman. I've been told. I was told that in a debate I was involved in. I don't know if that's true or not. The question is, it doesn't matter the complexion of the cop. It doesn't matter if they're working for a colonial authority, because Colin Powell was over the military that was killing people throughout the Middle East and that participated in murdering people in Vietnam. He worked for white power with a black face. So what we're saying is that if we control the police department, the black community control the police department, there might even be white people on the police force, but they would be working for the black community, and then what their responsibilities would be absolutely different. And if they committed the kind of infraction that we're seeing happening in our community, where you cannot walk down the street, anybody who's been on Canfield Drive, anybody who's seen the apartments there knows that there's nothing wrong with walking down the middle of the street. And somebody who came and said, get out of the street, knew they were looking for a problem, and they were not there to try to serve the people. So we're saying it doesn't matter that much the complexion. What matters, what counts, is who's in charge. And we're saying black people are going to be in charge with gun-wielding people in our communities, all of them. And that's what we have to fight for. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but we are saying that's the way it's going to be, and that's the struggle. And we're not going to allow a narrative to be created that makes an assumption that this police organization that somehow can be reformed, can go through some kind of sensitivity training, can wear some cameras when we've seen what happens with cameras operating full blast. That's not going to work for us. We have to take control of our own conditions. And that's what we're going to do. Our whole humanity and dignity as a people demands that we move in this direction.
Do you get control through the electoral process then? Or
we get control. We'll work it out. The thing is, we're going to get the control. That's the thing. We're going to get the control. We'll work it out. If you got suggestions, we'll put up suggestion boxes for whomever, but we're going to get control. That is what has to happen. And I want to thank you so much for coming out. And just to say that justice has to prevail. We cannot live in a world where a portion of the population lives in constant fear and terror of the very same institutions that's supposed to bring protection and comfort to people. And while it may be true, it possibly is true that in the white communities the police come to take kittens out of trees and help little old ladies across the street. That is not their function in the African community. We are occupied by a colonial force that's armed to the teeth, that has nothing but disdain for a population that it treats as the other. We're tired of it, and we're not going to tolerate it anymore. And I want to just say the heroic people in Ferguson, black people in Ferguson, are responsible for creating this discussion around equality and democracy in this country right now. Black people in Ferguson who stood up to tanks and what have you, made it necessary for Barack Hussein Obama to have to say something. Black people, poor people in Ferguson, not some big shot, not some politicians, not some government official, but poor black people in Ferguson stood up and made it necessary for Holder to bring his ass here to this city. So that's where the power is, and that's the force that we are responsible for and responsible to. And so thank you so much. And also be thankful that we're having this discussion, and be thankful to those black people poor people who are there in Ferguson who made it possible and necessary. Thank you very much.
I'd like to make a statement on behalf of InPDUM. From the local branch of the International People's Democratic Uhuru movement, we think it's extremely urgent that we hold the Black People's Grand Jury and build a campaign for black community control of the police. As a mother, I'm outraged and deeply concerned about the ongoing law enforcement-based violence that's taken the lives of our children, such as Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Vonderrit Myers, and most recently Tamir Rice, to name a few. As we can see from the tireless resistance of our community that has continued for more than 4 months, African people are tired of these daily threats to our families and ourselves. We believe that St. Louis County Grand Jury's, the St. Louis County Grand Jury's decision not to indict Officer Darren Wilson is a travesty and a slap in the face of our community. And we unite in this process to come to our own conclusions about the criminality of Darren Wilson in our own transparent grand jury. We also unite with the demands for Black community control of the police with the power to hire, fire, and discipline the police. Uhuru.
Uhuru. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
You got our information. No, I don't. That's part of it. So,
There's some of the folks that don't say
you got that card? You got that?
I got the.
No, I don't.
Yeah, and this is Sister Tiffany, you know. Okay, yeah.
Right on, y'all. Let me get some cutaways real quick.
This brother here.
I saw you when I first saw you at Lakeside.
Carrie, I'll be at the truck.
Thank you again.
Hey, thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Thank you.
I'm Gary.
Gary?
Gary the weather guy.
Okay.
You the weather guy?
Well, you know what was his name? What was his name? Bob Dylan, what did he say about about the weather? You don't need a, right? To tell which way the wind is blowing. You don't need the weatherman. All right, Gary. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Very inspiring.
Splendid.
Very
Thank
inspiring.
you. Thank you.
Very insightful.
Thank you very much.
And I think well, obviously.